Welcome to another live stream. The Gangstalking Mind Virus Methodology. Yeah. Um, and we've talked a lot about how the invasion of a target's mind, the invasion of someone's psyche is it's right on the foundational level in gang stalking. The subjection to trauma and all that comes out of that is crucial. It gets in your head. They get in your mind. They don't ask permission either. They don't have to. Because as soon as you are subjected to the attack, as soon as you experience the wonderful methods of this gang stalking menagerie, that's all it takes. That's really all it is. It's like a mental tattoo. They come in, they set it up, they attack you, they traumatize you, and they're in. And all the little games and methods that are around the scenario. Well, that just makes it interesting, right? That's just that's just part of the show because the process of sensitization involves all those little tactics, whether it's an object of significance, a key word or a phrase, maybe a color, the one headlight, or some little tune that they're going to whistle, someone jingling their keys, accusing you of something, or people talking about a particular topic, you know, and all the other things that are out there that are probably a little more obvious because it just depends on what they want to do. If they want to make you think you're crazy or draw you out with that plausible deniability, they'll just pretend like they're having a conversation or something, maybe between a group of people or whatever. And those directed conversations are fun. Innuendos, they're lots of fun. But maybe they'll just smirk. Maybe they'll add a little bit of spice on top of the game, and they do that rather well. And the problem comes in later. At first, the target, you know what's going on. They want you to. They want you to be aware. They want you to know that you're being invaded. You have to know that they're after you. It's crucial because they have to traumatize you, and then add all those little things in there, little add-ons and environmental stimuli to go along with it, so that next time, why, you'll know exactly what's going on. Or maybe you're just reading into it, and the one of the things that I've noticed is at least because I've talked about this before, I don't think I know everything. I'm not giving you advice out of a vacuum. I'm sharing I'm sharing my experience. I've made all the mistakes. The only damn thing I never did was try to talk about this stuff because I was exposed to a lot of it really when I was a kid, and I just didn't know what it was. But I knew to be quiet. I knew that people that talk about that stuff, well, they're going to get labeled. You're crazy. You're going to have to put you away somewhere or whatever. It was different when I was growing up. People would threaten you with that kind of stuff. Nowadays, everybody's crazy. It's kind of normal. As long as you're not hurting anybody, it's just nothing,
it's not a problem. In fact, I was contacted by someone, and they were afraid to talk to me. I'm not going to say who it was. They said, well, um, I've got a problem in the sense that if I talk about this stuff, I could end up, back at the hospital. I could end up being incarcerated. And I thought, well, that's, I don't know what's happening, but, if you're not a danger to other people or yourself, they can't do that. But sometimes they can actually, and I forgot about the fact that when a bunch of people get together, maybe some wonderful family members or whatever, and they decide that, you've kind of flown the cuckoo's nest, that they can have you committed for a period of time. And I forgot all about that. But, when you start talking, that's when trouble starts. And, like I said, I'm not, when I talk about this stuff, um, I'm sharing my struggles. I'm sharing, the things that I deal with. And uh, what what I was going to say is that one of the problems that I think all targets are going to be dealing with, and I know I've dealt with it, is that when something happens, what's the first thing that you think about as a target, man? I mean, what's the first thing that runs through your mind, right? I mean, it's going to be something a little off, or something happens to you or your personal property or whatever, and the first thing that pops into my head, it's a perp. It's gangstalking. The bastards, they did it again, and it might not have anything to do with it, but it illustrates that invasion. It illustrates what they do to you when they attack you, and it's not just once. I mean, technically, it's all it would take. You wouldn't have to do this to somebody as much as what happens to targets, and typically, it's a subjection that happens, consecutively. It happens, often, very often, because they got to get you reading into things. They've got to get you looking for it. They have to get you into that mode where you're processing information in a personal way, right? Because, before all this happened to you, if you're a typical target, you weren't thinking about that stuff. You weren't even there's a lot of people out there that I've talked to that I didn't even lock my door. I didn't worry about none of this stuff. I didn't think about that kind of thing. I wasn't walking into a grocery store looking around, waiting for the freak, critique. I wasn't thinking about it. But after you start dealing with this stuff, after it's really that weird. I mean, the target gets into that place where they're getting attacked, they're dealing with personal information. It gets more aggressive, it gets more obvious, more personal information is used, threats are employed, and you're freaked out, and then you see it. Rather than just walking into a grocery store and say, "Oh, I don't know, maybe they're just joking around over there," but they're looking at you and smirking or whatever. And "Oh, how you doing?" They yell at you from across the store, like they didn't even know who you are. "Having a good day?" "Yeah." "Uh-huh. Yeah, how about that weather?" "Who the hell are you?" "Hang in there." "Okay. Uh-huh. Thanks. I'm gonna have a good day." People just, and it's obfuscated by that kind of plausible deniability. They might throw something else in there, but after all that happens, after all the attention that the target gets, and it's like that Truman effect that targeted individuals deal with, where they're processing information differently. I remember one night, I've talked about this before. Gosh, it must have been 2 a.m. or something, and I'd gone to sleep, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom! Somebody's banging on my window. And, as a target, there's all kinds of things in the air. And a lot of times, literally sometimes actually, especially if you're dealing with a fuming, but, there's all kinds of threats. There's things going on. A lot of times you're running for your life. I just moved into a different place at that point. Literally had to leave where I was living because, it was attempted murder. I'm not going to go into it right now. It's the first video in the video playlist. Go watch it if you want.
And I had left, and there's all kinds of things happening, and
Just like any victim of trauma, and especially someone who's been attacked at night, they always use those vulnerable times
to go after the target. They'll come into your house at night and do things to you, drug you, take your clothes off, move things around, invade, and it's traumatizing. I mean, even if they didn't do anything to you, it would still freak you out.
They were in here. What did they do? And sometimes it gets pretty, personal. But my point is that when you're awakened like that, boom, your heart is pounding. You're already running for your life. The first thing in your mind, especially if your target has been dealing with this stuff for like some damn perps, it's the gang stalkers. What do they want? And at that juncture, I had the security system up. And so I'm like, gosh, what the hell was it? And my heart's pounding. I got up and I watched the footage, and it had nothing to do with me, man. It was a drunk lady coming back from the bar in the middle of the night, and she was going all the way down the street, pounding on everybody's window. But if I wouldn't have had the camera, I would have thought for sure it was me.
I remember one morning I woke up, and it's,
because sometimes you'll deal with, noise campaigns or other things to, these little games,
you got to love it. And sometimes they'll throw stuff at your house or whatever, yell and do all kinds of, strange things. It's just
anything to create that toxic, volatile atmosphere around the targeted individual. And that I heard something. It sounded like somebody was throwing something up on the roof. Gosh, that's the sons of bitches, And so I went and checked it out. This little squirrel was jumping around up there. Had nothing to do with stalking, And I could go through a list, and it's not that. My point isn't that targets are reading into things all the time, and that that there's just a bunch of crazy people who think there's targets. I've heard people say that. I don't believe that. I don't look at things like schizophrenia or some of the other stuff in the sequelae of the DSM as a mental disease. I think I'm almost afraid to tell you what I think, but it goes right along with gang stalking. I think a lot of that stuff is just people being attacked, traumatized. I think some of it's spiritual. I think some of it's environmental. And I think at the end of the day, when you see somebody who is dysfunctional and they're having problems processing information, or there's other things going on that just seems to make them moody, or it seems to change the way they're processing information, or they just seem to be affected in a lot of areas. They're not sleeping properly, whatever. It all comes together. It's all that snowball effect, and they have the sequelae of whatever. You're bipolar, you're schizophrenic, you're this or that. But to me, it's not some ridiculous genetic thing. To me, it's not explainable in the way that psychiatry would approach it, right? And they do that. They do that for profit too. And I've talked about the unholy alliance between big pharma and psychiatry. It's, they're making money. Okay, we'll make it real simple. You get a 15-minute appointment. How does that make you feel? What kind of side effects from the medication? Okay, let's talk about a few things, and then I'm going to bill you, and I'm going to set you up for next week or next month or whatever. And we'll make sure and get your, script filled. And I'm not criticizing all psychiatry. I'm just saying it is what it is. Okay. Nobody is just crazy. Nobody has just got some kind of, mental disease or all these things that require medication. And the therapy that does it's non-existent in this whole thing. But there's no tests. There's no real backing of the pseudoscience around it. And at the end of the day, it's always something that targets are going to be confronted with because it fits the criteria. It fits the DSM, and I don't agree with it. And when I see somebody reading into stuff, maybe a video about gangstalking or whatever. For all I know, there's some things in there I'm just not noticing, but they're not just crazy. I've heard a lot of people say that about Target. Some of these people are just schizophrenic, man. Well, I don't think so. I think some of that stuff is demonic too. I was talking to a Target the other day, and I always mention the fact that when you talk about the demonic element of this world and of the things that targeted individuals deal with, I'm not, I believe that all the technology that we have came from them. They've shown men how to build cities, how to build computers, how to build jets, how to forge weapons, all of it. And that's, you get into the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, some people would consider it non-canonical, but there's still value in it. And you can see the correlations that are in the canon that a lot of people would consider legitimate. Some people get into the Apocrypha, some people get into, the Book of Enoch, and there's references to these things. And it's not so much the hocus pocus type of landscape that some people will come up with, and that not to mention the fact that there are people who are possessed, okay, and to understand the amalgamation of all these things, that when someone is oppressed, or someone is hearing V2K, or they are hearing voices, or they are dealing with certain, circumstantial anomalies, if you will, and other things in their environment that are hard to explain. We'll just put it that way. Sometimes you could speculate, because we are, that is technological. And that even though it's not done by a government agency or someone in a think tank looking at you from a picture in a satellite, that it can still be technology, because that's where it came from. Okay. And that people are also, they're not just, blackmailed or technologically influenced from the spiritual dimension. They can be possessed. They can. And, it's like you. I mean, everybody that's listening to this right now, you could equate it to a vehicle that you're driving. There's you and there's the vehicle, right? You can get a new vehicle, which is what the Bible talks about when it references the adoption of children in Ephesians 1, that you are predestined to that adoption. And in Romans 8:23, it says, we are waiting for that, to wit, the redemption of the body. You're going to get another body, okay? Another oikotarian, another vessel to live in, but you're on the inside, right? And when you get into looking at a lot of the work, by people like the late Dr. Michael Heiser or other individuals who look at the Hebrew perspective of all these things, and you get into the unclean spirits or other entities, the principalities, and so on and so forth. You got different things going on. And the amalgamated angelic and human beings that ended up dying after the flood that came out of the Genesis 6 account, well, they're disembodied. Okay, so they have a lot of motivation to get a hold of someone. Okay, and I'm just telling you that a lot of the things that you're going to deal with in gangstalking involve individuals who have been possessed or overtaken by these people or by these beings. And it explains a lot. There was somebody in the comments that said, well, I'm dealing with these directed conversations. How do they know all this stuff? Where do they get this information? And not all of it comes from there. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that this happens. It fundamentally is the same in the sense that you have a hierarchy that goes from the spiritual dimension on down to you, but there are a lot of different things in between. You've got the government, you've got the secret societies, you've got the good old boy societies, you've got the people in the occult, you've got different social groups. You got a lot of things. You even have people who end up getting involved in gangstalking that are, in the professional level, where they're maybe private investigating firms, people who specialize in espionage, so on and so forth. And then you just got the regular people who don't even know what's going on, that get drawn into it. And then there's people that can just be manipulated. But within the strata, within the structure of all these things, you have the perfectly possessed. You have people who are indwelt by the entities, and you also have people who are getting paid, and you have people who are in government programs and other things. And sometimes they're bugging your house. They are, I don't know, hacking your phone. They got cameras. They got ways of looking into things. And then sometimes you do have that spiritual element. But after all is said and done, it's enough to shake up the targeted individual. And, well, they're traumatized. Now you're going to be processing information differently. And it's going to affect the way you see the world around you. It's the gangstalking mind virus. And some people get offended when I talk about it. It's something I deal with, something I think all targets deal with. All victims of trauma deal with it. And here's something kind of weird. So I woke up this morning, everything was fine. And probably about between 12 and 1 o'clock, all of a sudden, I have this throbbing pain on the side of my head. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I was like, I don't know, what the hell's going on here? I don't know, maybe it's like one of those, I don't know, ice pick headaches or something. I don't know, whatever. You try to ignore things. You just have to exist anyway. And when you start worrying about stuff, everybody does that. Is it cancer? What is it? And you might as well just take yourself out in the middle of the country with a couple 2x4s and beat the shit out of yourself, because it never helps. It just makes you worry. You get anxious, and that sometimes the best thing to do is just forget about it all. Who knows what it is. And finally I was like, gosh, what the hell? And I tonight it's even worse. And I don't know, it feels like literally somebody hit me upside the head with a damn beer bottle. Okay. And it's sore. The side of my head is literally sore. But it wasn't like that when I woke up. And I didn't hit my head on anything that I'm aware of. Maybe it was a delayed reaction. I don't know. But I didn't see anything on the camera, on the footage. I have cameras everywhere. I've got them in my house. I've got them around my house. I've got them in my bedroom. And I don't feel safe without them. After all the things that I've been through, it just doesn't work out. I recommend that all targets, even though they do get around that stuff, to get security cameras and try to keep yourself safe. But I don't even know what the hell it is. And you start wondering, I'm pretty sure nobody got in here. I highly doubt the cat smacked me upside the head. I don't know. Maybe I accidentally punched myself or something. But it's always something like that. And, rather than to, as you were before, all these things happened to where you just, would have wrote it off as an anomaly. It somehow gets amalgamated in with the paranoia of being a targeted individual, and it's gang stalking, or possibly gang stalking. Anyway, I'm going to get out there in the comments and see who's in here tonight. And we've got a pretty good crowd in here. Travis, Steve the Pigeon. Oh, welcome. Okay, we got 2024 Savage Gang Stalking. We'll just call you that, or VLT. That's a heck of a name you got there. And Monster 2224, welcome to the live stream. Oh, Pamela Brown, welcome. Good to see you in here. And Nicholas, awesome. Nicholas didn't like the fight between Tyson and Paul. Okay. Well, everything seems to be hype, and I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it. So, it doesn't sound like I'm missing much, because I kind of predicted that when I heard about the whole thing, because Tyson, he's a big deal. He's always been a big deal. Watching that guy fight somebody is, it's exciting, period. Okay. The guy is one of the best boxers of all time. When he went to prison, I think his world changed a little bit. And I think they had him on psych drugs and stuff like that. I think that always changes people a little bit. Seemed like it affected his reflexes a titch, and he just wasn't the same for a while. I don't know about now. He certainly looks good. He certainly he's got the physique and the power and everything. But it's not the same. It's not the same. It's just now we've got these freak shows and everything else, and he's still around. He's still got it. He's still got the talent and everything, but it just, how it is. It's kind of like that stuff that we talk about concerning Hollywood and, how you got to be sold out. You got to be on the inside. It's like when actors just get thrown to the side and they're like, what happened? What the, WTF happened to so-and-so? And it's just, they just disappear in obscurity somewhere. And, it's like what I talked about when you go to some of those open mic nights, or you go walking into a bar and there's this band and they're awesome. And the person is just singing and you're like, man, this guy or this gal could be famous. But, for some reason they're never going to make it because they're just not in that. They don't have the connections, and
It's just like that, you know. It's just
They keep things rolling a certain way. There was some guys that I would have liked to have seen fight Conor McGregor, but it just wouldn't have worked out. It would have ruined everything for, I think, the people who set these things up. Michael Venom Page, an intense MMA fighter. The guy was, I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him in that arena. Lightning speed. He's got a ridiculous amount of reach. Intense, powerful moves. What would have happened? We'll never know, will we? Because they don't let that kind of stuff happen. Seeing him go up against McGregor, they don't let that kind of stuff go down. But yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out though. So anyway, let's see what else is going on in here. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Nicholas Boserman says, figuring out what they have sensitized you to can help you reverse it. I'm assuming that's what you're getting at. That's interesting. Being aware of the fact that you are being sensitized, just the fact that you are being sensitized is quite a bit, let alone to understand all the elements of what they might be trying to do. But just the fact that you're being messed with, that invasion is going on, that they want you to process information in a different way, that's, right there, that's half the battle. Because you're still going to be triggered. You're still going to be paranoid because you're being harassed. But at the same time, you don't have to let it, bewilder you. You don't have to, I don't know, you're going to be triggered, but you don't have to be deceived by the whole thing. It's different when you know what's happening to you. And I think Nicholas is right. And you can kind of see their plan depending on what's going on, right? It's a classic example is the headlight thing. What do you think they're trying to do there? Gee, let's see. I wonder if they're trying to get me to read into everybody out there who hadn't replaced their headlight. Gee, I wonder. Now I'm going to be seeing it everywhere. The red cars, the red shirts, the whistling. Not everybody who's whistling is a gangstalker, but to the target who's been sensitized, you just never know. And that's the fun. That's the fun of it. Andy Smith, welcome to the live stream. I'm doing okay. Like I said earlier, I feel like somebody hit me upside the head with something. Is there a directed energy weapon out there that can do something like that? Because I woke up this morning feeling great, comparatively speaking. I don't know. I mean, I must have just bumped my head or something. I don't know, whatever. But I thought it was kind of funny at the same time as bewildering. You don't know what the hell's going on. Okay. Dead Pirate Lenny, welcome to the live stream. Interesting. Dead Pirate Lenny says the headlight thing is nuts. Because if I have anything wrong with my car, I get pulled over the same day. So then these other people can get away with it. But not you. Not you, Lenny. They're not going to let you get away with it, man. They got their eye on you. Yes, they do. Interesting. Okay. And Andy Smith says, yes, there is. I've been flying with it for about a month now, feeling very dizzy, and I hear a buzzing in my ears. I've got tinnitus a lot. Sometimes it gets really bad, man. But I noticed that, during what I would perceive as spiritual attacks, that it gets really loud. And I've heard a lot of targets talk about the V2K or other things, direct energy weapons. And as I mentioned earlier, that I believe it's all connected, and I believe that even the spiritual dimension uses technology. But it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that targets have that sequelae, right? The bell tones. White noise seems to help me, you know, and because you notice it so much more when it's quiet, but I do agree that it accompanies that kind of thing. And sometimes it'll make you feel dizzy. I've had that happen. I had something happen to me one time where I've never had that happen before. And I've heard targets talk about this stuff to where it sounds like somebody is outside. It doesn't sound like a little voice in your head kind of a thing. And you look out the window and nobody's there. But this time I had the ringing, and then I had this dizzy, and it was like it was a sickening feeling, but I could hear, it sounded like 6 soundtracks playing simultaneously. I mean, it could have been 5. I don't know. It was multiple. And it was like music and people talking. And it was like if you would take, 6 recordings and meld them together. And I was like, what the hell is that? I looked up and there was no one out there. There's windows on all sides of the rental that I was in. There was no one outside, but it gave me a real woozy feeling, dizzy. I felt weak. You get that weird pressure in, one of your ears. A lot of people say it's typically the left ear. And then it's just, I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, oh, this is weird, man. Because it wasn't like it was tricky in the sense that somebody was trying to get me to believe that a demon was talking to me or that it was my own voice. It was obviously something electronically generated or something, but I didn't, I was like, I'm just going to go lay down and go to bed. Because usually when targets get attacked, what's the first thing that they're looking for?
Well, they want a reaction, don't they?
So I just went to bed, and when I woke up, it was gone. It never happened again. But that ringing, a lot of targets, all targets, talk about
the tinnitus.
Very common. I don't think it's a coincidence. Of course, to other people, that's just it must just be part of our mass psychosis or something, huh? Yeah, right. Okay. So this Pamela says too, which a very credible target in my opinion. Yes, in the left ear it goes off like a loud beep. Okay, so that's even more confirmation. How can that be a coincidence that we all have the same thing like that? It's always the left ear, most of the time, probably 80 to 95% of the time. And then they got the tinnitus and other things are happening. That's, to me, that's just proof that all these people that are talking about that stuff having the same symptoms are experiencing something that is very legitimate and very real. Let's see here. I'm trying to figure out which comment to read now. I have to magnify this a bit. My eyes have been a little blurry, sorry. Sorry, I accidentally put somebody's comment and I probably magnified it up there for everybody to read. And now I'm going to have to get it off there. Sorry about that. Andy, sorry about that. You want to put that back up there, do it. Okay, Ruminations of a TI. That's an interesting name. Welcome to the live stream. And this is interesting. Ruminations of a TI says, lately I hear crickets literally. So, I've heard targets talk about that. In fact, I remember when I was looking into some of the devices that people can buy to kind of mess with people. The one of them was like that. One of them was a little deal to where it was the pesky little cricket, because at that point, if you do that to somebody who's trying to sleep or something like that, they're, of course, what are they going to, they're going to find that little sucker, unless you like that. Some people, it would, help put them to sleep. I don't mind a little crick, but you know what? If you get sensitized to something like that, it makes it even worse. And so then you're just anticipating orally the little cricket, and it'll keep you awake all night, drive you nuts. But I remember seeing something like that where and there was a few different sounds that this thing made. But so you got something that is, I guess you could say it's plausibly real, but obviously fake. That's interesting. So the thing I would ask is, does it sound like the cricket noise like in your head, or is it like in your environment, or seem like it's in your environment? Okay, so ruminations of a TI says you went walking around looking for this little guy. Yeah. So that's but if they're pretty hard to find, but at least at that point you can kind of tell if it's real, because you could do something like that to somebody, because a lot of the stuff that happens to targets is it's just there to make you wonder if you're losing it, and also to kind of trigger you, and to get you to internalize it, maybe even feel shameful at the same time, because of course it's just I'm just is that real? I don't know. Are we real? I think we are. Yeah. Oh yeah. So I didn't mean to do that, Andy. Sorry about that, man. And Andy Smith says, when the nano is in your body, we are like antennas with the 5G and the frequencies. That how when the nano is in your body, we are like antennas. Okay, so it looked like you kind of repeated that a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I've heard some stuff about that. The thing about a lot of the information out there is that sometimes it's mixed in with disinformation, and you just don't know. But I did a video on that once, and 5G and something else that we never can talk about on YouTube, if you know what I'm talking about. And they took it off. I mean, they slapped that sucker off there so fast that I got a violation, and I was done for about a week. And I came back on and modified it. But I've heard stuff like that. I've heard a lot about nanotechnology and some of that can actually possibly be inside the human body and interact with different frequencies and RF signals and other things, along with not only the ability to do things, but to actually I don't know, kind of create a network or even other things with inside the human body. Now, like I said, I don't know if any of it is true, but I've heard some pretty credible people talk about that stuff. And then I've also heard that, from other individuals, and some of them are pretty credible, that we don't even need the 5G, and that the only reason they did that was for stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, because, I don't know. But, it's kind of like the whole, getting rid of the phone booths and everything, right? Why in the hell, because think about this, if we'll just say that you wanted to start a business and you're like, you know what? I don't think it was a good idea for them to get rid of all the phone booths out there. By damn it, I'm going to start putting a couple up. I don't think they'd let you do it. Think about it. They got rid of all that stuff. You can't find a phone booth anywhere, nowhere. And it doesn't make sense because things can happen to people. And so what they do, they ended up putting those emergency deals up, with the little blue lights on them or whatever. And what are you going to go push a button? It's like a little intercom and talk to the dispatch at the local cops. I never tried it before. But don't you, it's more than suspicious. Why not just have a couple phone booths here and there? They don't want it. They don't want it. And, there's a reason. The old Machiavellian turnkey totalitarianism. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, let's see what else is going. And Nicholas Bosman says that he got the cricket thing as a precursor to the V2K. Huh. Interesting. So that was some type of a, I don't know, maybe it was a test or something. And then they kind of lit it off after that. I don't know. Ernie says that he even heard gunshots. Okay, welcome to the live stream, Ernie. Yeah. The thing that I talked about this a couple of years ago, and I put it on videos, and it happened a few times this summer, but not as much as it did like I don't know if it was, I'm trying to remember now, but probably sometime around the year 2020 to 2023, it seemed like there were a lot of explosions and stuff like that in city centers, and everybody was talking about it, and it would just scare the hell out of you. There was a lot of it, and they were big explosions, man. I'm not just talking about, somebody lighting off an M80 or, a big homemade firecracker or something. I mean, there was stuff that boom, and it was just like, whoa. I mean, you could almost feel the shock wave, and it would happen periodically. And it was something that a lot of people were talking about all over the United States. And it was happening in city centers, and people were just, what the hell's up with all these, explosions? Weird stuff. There's a lot of strange anomalies and things out there. I've referenced the trumpet sounds around the world, and I think that started maybe in 2013 or 2015, where they had these, I mean, it sounds like a huge, giant shofar, somewhere up in the atmosphere, or from a place nobody can really tell where these sounds are coming from. And then you get into different things like Project Bluebeam, or other things involving holographic technology. I think Nick has talked about the holograph stuff, holograms and stuff like that. There's still, in fact, a lot of targets have mentioned that. But for me, when I heard about that, you combine that with a little V2K and some Bluebeam technology and the shofar and some other stuff, you could almost fake not only like a pre-tribulation rapture thing with drones and who knows what else, to where they could make people think they missed the rapture. Right, little V2K in there, try to make it sound like Jesus or something. Sorry, you weren't ready, or whatever. Why didn't you believe or something? And just freak everybody out. They think that they got left behind, like the classic movie. I've mentioned this before. I don't believe in a pre-tribulation rapture for a lot of reasons. That's okay if you do. It's not going to hurt you. At least you believe in a rapture. But, the other thing is that, you have that whole fake alien invasion thing. And then we've got the whistleblowers and the government, and they're talking about holographic stuff there, right? Holograms, because there was a lot of inconsistency in that. I made a video about that, where you had bodies and evidence, but at the same time, you're dealing with things that just look like they're there. I was like, well, you're kind of mixing that up in a way that it's like you want the best of both worlds, and you got them or not. You're saying we got this evidence. We don't. To me, it's just my personal opinion. I don't believe in little green men from somewhere out there. I look at this through the biblical lens, and I think that that's probably more than likely interdimensional stuff going on with the angelic realm. I do believe people are seeing these things. I believe when people come out and tell their story about alien abduction or whatever, even if it sounds unbelievable, you can always find something to track back to this, interaction between human beings and the angelic realm, the Genesis 6 account. Even when you're talking about the Greys and some of the Irish myths where people would disappear and have amnesia, and you have other people talking about, like women getting abducted during that time of the month when they're ovulating, or people experimenting or getting, a type of, sexual experimentation done on them. And even when you look into some of that stuff, supposedly, after the flood, not only was the lifespan shortened, but the ability for the breeding that took place before that, it changed as well. And so the whole speculation, and I emphasize speculation, is that, even when you get into the Greys and some other things, that these beings that are doing this stuff, supposedly when people think that they're being, abducted, that they're trying to fix that issue. They're trying to figure out ways to do their little genetic thing. Because when you get into the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, that's really what was going on when you had the 200 Watchers fall on Mount Hermon, and right before that, Azazel was the pioneer and playing around with this whole genetic thing. And you had the sons of God, getting together with the daughters of men, and it was, a lot of bad things came out of that. But that's kind of where it all started. And some people believe that they're trying to fix that, or they're trying to create other types of oikotarian vessels for the disembodied spirits or whatever. But I don't know. It's like it's all just speculation. Interesting, but you don't know. And then there's other people that believe that it's the government, that they're just kind of masquerading as angels or demons, and the whole idea is to get people to believe that aliens are doing this stuff, when the whole time the government's the one doing the experiments on these people. And for them to obfuscate the illegal activity, they just make them think that aliens did it or whatever. That's I don't know. It could be an amalgamation of all those things. And Ruminations of a TI says the crickets just started around 2 weeks ago. And it is getting colder out. Maybe they, need a place to live, but before that, just good old fashioned tinnitus for around 2 years. You don't know. I mean, as Nick said, and Nicholas Boserman, our moderator, who is usually in here at the live, he said that started before his V2K, and he's dealt with a lot of V2K. So you don't know. You don't know. It sounds more than suspicious to me. Yeah. Andy Smith says, remember, Jesus said, whoever endures to the end will be saved. And I'm not going to dispute that. I know your application is talking in a general sense, and I think that generally that could be applied to everyone. But as I always do, we have to go into the emphasis that I believe could be more emphasizing a lot of what Paul was talking about, in the book of Romans, when he talked about, don't be high-minded and say that the Jews were cut off so that we could be grafted back in, because if they believe, right, they could be grafted back in, but they have the veil of Moses over them, and so on and so forth. And, even in Romans chapter 9, Paul talked about the fact that the purpose of God's election had not failed, in the sense that election is more of a job title than it is a soteriological application, and that Abraham was chosen for the noble task of bringing forth the Christ out of his lineage, right? But he also mentioned, the fact that God was not done and had not cast off those which he foreknew, prognosko, or known intimately before, which is another interpretation of the Greek word prognosko. Because some people will say, well, that's just talking about God knowing things before. That's foreknowledge. Well, not always. Sometimes it's talking about a type of intimate type of knowing or relationship from a previous time period, which of course is the application in Romans 8:2, emphasized further when Paul said that all Israel will be saved. Okay, what does that mean? A lot of people will ponder that, and when you get into some of the things that Jesus talked about, he said, very specifically that he who endures to the end will be saved. But he was talking to a specific audience at that point, wasn't he? Because he came first to the Jew, right? They had the oracles of God, so on and so forth. And what's going to happen? Well, they've got the veil of Moses, but when they see the sign of the Son of Man, right? And that's of course the rapture, the return of the Lord, spoken about in 2 Thessalonians, regarding the return of our Lord and our gathering to him. Don't be confused. Don't be shaken in mind. Don't be, don't be deceived about that. And it talked about the Antichrist, that day shall not happen until what? Until the lawless one is revealed, the Antichrist, the son of perdition. And there's going to be all kinds of things happening, lying signs and wonders and all that kind of wonderful stuff. And of course, the Jews are looking for a sign, but then there's going to be the mark, and there's going to be economic coercion, and so on and so forth. And there's going to be a lot of people getting killed and all kinds of things happening. And in my opinion, primarily in the cosmic geography over there in the Middle East. But why is that crucial to understand that? Because cosmic geography is very crucial to understand. And that where's Jesus going to return? He's going to return right over there in that cosmic geography. Okay. And if they're going to see the one whom they pierced, who's that? That's the Jews, because they're the ones that crucified the Lord, right? And they're going to mourn as one mourns for their firstborn. But they're going to rejoice because, why? Because if they're alive at the time Jesus comes back, the veil of Moses is going to be taken away and all Israel is going to be saved. So if you endure to the end of that time, that great tribulation, right? Which is, people get that confused, because when Jesus said, after the tribulation of those days, then the sun is going to be darkened and the moon's not going to give its light and the stars are going to fall, so on and so forth. The meteorological event, the great and terrible day of the Lord talked about in the Old Testament, right? After the tribulation of those days, after that time, and God's going to return. And then what? All Israel's going to be saved. They're going to see that. So if they endure, if they don't take the mark of the beast, if they don't do this, then what's going to happen? They're good. That veil of Moses is going to be taken off, and all Israel is going to be saved. So you got to keep that in context. You got to keep that in there, because if you don't, a lot of people miss that. A lot of people get in there and they criticize the whole idea that Israel is legitimately gathered over there, which I believe they are, and I can prove that with a calculator. But the thing is when you see all that stuff, supersessionism and all the anti-Semitism that's going to be here in the last, and I think we are. If people talk about the last days, technically that is referring to the final 2,000 years or the age of grace that we are in now, which we are supposedly, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the last 48 years. But as far as being towards the end, I think we're right there. And who knows how long it's going to be. And I've talked about that before, that, when this whole thing comes to a close, and the millennium, which I believe there's going to be a literal millennium. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's 4 ages. The first 3 have 2,000 years apiece. And we're in the last 2,000-year age, according to that calendar. And then there's going to be 1,000 years. So that lines up perfectly with what we see in the book of Revelation. But there ain't going to be any gangstalking then. Boy, that'll be nice. Anyway, get back into the comments here. I was kind of rambling on there for a minute. Okay, here. Gosh, my eyes are blurry, and I don't know why. God, it makes me wonder here. I'm going to try. Hopefully, I won't erase somebody's comment. I'm going to try and magnify this a little bit. I think it's the white background that's getting me. And Ernie says, I'm convinced they want to kill me. Oh, wait. I'm convinced they want me to kill myself. Why else keep tormenting me? Yeah. And it looks like you and Nick are talking, but I think all targets wonder that, And it's like, what the hell do they want? Are you having fun yet? Are we providing you with the desired entertainment that you need for your sadistic pleasure? Or is something else going on here? Oh, I mentioned that before. A lot of things going on with this. They're getting a lot of, I don't know, possible benefits from this whole thing. I've talked about the spiritual vampirism, the sadistic fun, their handlers, they get to do things, but, they're really just condemning themselves. Technically, that's really the takeaway. It's like all the stuff I've talked about before. Why do they want you to do this weird stuff and these rituals and Freemasonry and the occult and all that? Well, they want to condemn you. They want to get your hands dirty. And once they do, well, you got to eat the sandwich at that point, don't you? I mean, it's one thing to make a mistake. It's one thing to sin in a moment of weakness. And it's another thing to engage in this type of behavior over and over and over. And for what? Right? If somebody gets hungry or they're, maybe homeless and they steal some food from a grocery store, I could see that. That makes sense to me, right? But what about this stuff? What about the decades of torment that targeted individuals endure at the hands of their stalkers, at the level of where as many targets have illustrated, had them contemplating suicide. All right. And, I mentioned too, and I put that video up in the playlist, that one of the things that they are trying to push through, not only in, different areas like the elderly and depression and stuff like that, for the euthanasia or assisted suicide, but for people with mental illness. And they're starting to take it into another forbidden area of where they're offering it to children. Oh, yes. With their pseudoscience and bastard prognosis of incurable mental diseases that are just supposedly going to ravage these people indefinitely, and that they might just be better off dead. Imagine that, along with the whole idea that targeted individuals are just crazy. But, they're being tormented too. When are they going to start offering that to you? I was glad to see that Trump is taking away funding from that gender affirming, whole agenda to try to get kids to, alter their bodies according to maybe some confusion, right? I was so glad to see that. I put it up on my other Facebook page, and it's just, there's nothing too crazy for these people. After seeing the things that I've seen, nothing surprises me. Whether it's drag queen story hour, or parents, can be lied to as their, minor child who is still a minor runs away from home so they can go get some operation somewhere, or the whole thing about doctor assisted suicide. Back in the days of Kevorkian, old Doc Kevorkian, Dr. Death. And he I think he did some time in jail, and he was, but now they've taken it to a whole new level, and now they've amalgamated it in with this pseudoscience, along with that unholy alliance with big pharma. And you got people who are becoming dysfunctional on the meds, who are developing the sequelae that supposedly is being fixed with the medication, like serotonin syndrome. And that, because none of that stuff was real. None of it was real. You have this whole mythos of people with all these different chemical deficiencies, but really the evidence pointed towards the fact that didn't even happen until they took the damn drugs. And of course, the confusing aspect of it was when they took them off the pills, they really freaked out. Well, of course, now they really got a problem. They're addicted. They're having, withdrawal symptoms and everything else. But, I think that's something that all targets are going to be dealing with. The fact that they're trying to normalize that whole thing it's frightening to me. It is. The Suicide Pod. Watch it. Go into the playlist and look at it. They literally built, it looks like a little, carnival ride thing that somebody could get into. And it just helps take you out. Imagine that. Oh, now for some reason I got the fuming thing going on again. Gee, imagine that. Hold on a minute, guys. Oh my gosh. Whew. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm back. I'm done. I'm not gonna say anymore. Okay, let's see what you guys are talking about here. And Nicholas says, I'm as normal and social as you can be after going through this. They even put my ass in a wheelchair and I still go out. F them, chase me around, burn me, V2K me. I don't care. I do what I want. And that's true. I mean, I know Nick kind of personally, and he is normal. Um, Definitely not what you'd expect from somebody who is considered mentally ill and hearing voices at all. Or your typical, mentally ill person who thinks that, everybody's after them and suffering from a persecutory delusion. And in fact, I've talked to Nick about some of the things that he's experienced, and I would have to affirm that the last thing that he is paranoid. In fact, he's the opposite of that, even after experiencing all the gangstalking that he's gone through. And he's not lying. So you're not worried about it at all. So that's, to me, that's proof that not only is Nick not mentally ill, but that other targets are not. And the fact that we're all experiencing the same thing is just too much of a coincidence for sure. Okay. And I don't know if you're talking to somebody specifically or not. Monster 2244. Good gosh. I hate that handle, by the way. I'm just kidding. What? What's the difference between now and who you were years ago? Okay. And now the whole message thing just flipped on me. Sorry about that. You didn't know what witchcraft was, but you can just feel it in your body that something isn't right. Well, yeah. Uh, a lot of the stuff that that happens to targets, like I said, something could have happened to you before you knew you were a target individual, and it didn't affect you psychologically the same way. And unfortunately, there's a lot of disinformation and confusion out there about a lot of this stuff. And we can feel a lot of things. We can feel a lot of different ways. There's technology that can make us feel certain ways. There's stuff that's just demonic, and there's other things. There's physical things that we deal with that can make us feel a certain way. But it's that psyche, it's that psychosomatic connection between feel and mental perception that becomes the medium for all the stuff that we deal with as targets. I mentioned that that guy that I used to watch this dude's channel, and he got some heavy gang stalking. But one of the big themes was that there was a lot of witchcraft involved in what he was. That I dealt with that. I dealt with a lot of it. I know exactly what he's talking about. I mean, I had people coming around and doing the classic stuff, talking about things that they shouldn't have known about, telling me things that were going to happen, threatening me, saying that they were astral projecting into my house. They were leaving different objects and trinkets and other things around, and they were casting spells and doing all this stuff and putting hexes. And it was really creepy. But what's really going on in witchcraft, And you have to see, the whole psychological game that's played. And they would tell me, we did this, to something in your house or whatever. And it got to the point where I was literally getting rid of my personal possessions because I thought they were, infested with some type of curse or something. And the demonic realm played into it. I think it was one time that there was a bunch of them. We did something to your guitar, and so then I'd be, sitting around in the house and I'd get all these weird feelings and sensations and all this stuff. And sometimes, and I would, go try to play it and it would get worse. And it wasn't just in my head. It was probably, the old 1-2 punch. You got the suggestion, the little seed in your mind. And then of course the demons come along and they play little games along with it. And I ended up getting rid of that. I ended up getting rid of a lot of stuff. And that guy that I was talking about, he had a channel one day that he burned some money. And these people came up, and because he was homeless. I think he was living under a bridge, man. And these people came up and gave him some cash. And as soon as he touched it, he said he could feel something. Keyword, feel. And, that's what they do. And then, of course, like I said, you have disinformation and you have all the suggestions and stuff. And it plays into the fear. And so he burned the money. He figured it was, spells were on it. The stuff was on it, whatever. The curse. But really, it was just money. It's like what Paul talked about when people were afraid to eat, meat that was sacrificed to an idol. He says, you can go ahead and do it. But if there's someone else around who is troubled in their conscience concerning the whole matter, don't do it, because you don't want to freak them out. You don't want to put a stumbling block in front of them, right? You don't want to do that. They've got a mental stronghold. They've got a mind virus concerning something, and all these different ways to manipulate people and get them to feel certain ways. It'll be used in the mind virus methodology of gangstalking. And it's happened to me. I know a lot of people it's happened. What do you do at that point? I mean, it might as well be real. There was a guy that he would go around a certain area, and the whole idea is there was some kind of a, I don't know, some type of an infestation in this place. And every time he would even go near it, man, he would just get all these feelings. It was negative stuff, bad mojo, bad vibes, if you will. And it's got to be real. It's got to be real. Same kind of thing that I was dealing with. So you got to be careful. You got to be, you're getting attacked, absolutely. But the ideation, the perception, the mental stuff that goes along with what you're dealing with, that's what you got to be careful of. Because it's like Nick said. Nick is like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm not going to, because what they want to box you in is what they want to do. And if they start really afflicting you enough, they can do that kind of thing. They've done it to me, and I've seen it happen to other people, other targets that become agoraphobic, and they don't want to leave their house. And they're afraid to go in public. They start getting panic attacks. When you afflict somebody, you can change. This whole idea of strength and weakness and all these other, that can be manufactured. It's like the guy that I referenced. I don't know. There's a few live streams ago where he was that firefighter, and he was, the ex, military guy, the hero, ex-cop, and everything. And then all of a sudden, he starts having panic attacks. Changed everything. Yeah, first time or two, yeah, he's still going out there. He's still, trying to be a firefighter. He had to take a break off of work because he's the rescuer, and all of a sudden he has a panic attack when he's going to a fire, and they had to rescue him. It was over. They overlooked it, and then it happened again. Now what happens? Now you start getting scared of being scared. It's fear of fear at that point. It has reciprocity. And then you start, wondering if it's going to happen. Am I going to lose control? Is something going to happen to me? And you all of a sudden you go from being a hero to being a coward, but it's all in your head. It's all an ideation in your mind. It's all mental. And, we're vessels. We're like little clay vessels. And we can be molded one way or the other, right? It's like when people get in those religious circles, and the religious spirits start playing games with people, right? And they want to control your emotions, they want to control your perceptions, and they've got their little poster boy, and they've got the false doctrine, and they've got these emotional experiences. And then what do they do to the person who's the victim? Well, this is the opposite, right? Everybody else seems to be getting blessed. They're having these emotional experiences. They're crying and talking about, I can feel the Holy Spirit. It's beautiful. And that person that's not getting that's getting the attack, and so they're not getting any of it. And what happens? They believe incorrectly that God is not blessing them, or that something is weird about them, right? And they're persecuted and told they don't have enough faith or whatever is happening. And it's all a big game, right? That's all it is. And the people who are deceived by that stuff, they internalize it. They internalize the shame. They internalize the guilt. And when you deal with targeted individuals, and you deal with all the little games that targets play with their handlers, with the stalkers that are trying to invade their mind and get them to believe the lies that they are selling them, to get them in a place where they can mold their identity, where they can take them like a piece of clay and get them dysfunctional, get them paranoid, get them in a place where they believe it, right? And so, Nick is fighting back, and that's good. That's something that is inspiring to everybody. But then again, it also depends upon how much affliction that you've got coming your way. Because I've noticed before, because I've done the same thing. And also I'll, incrementally kind of try to step back out, right? If you're first, you're just hanging out along the edge of the water. You don't know if it's safe to jump back in. You dip your toe in. It feels good. And then you kind of slip in, and you're just right at the edge. And then you start swimming around, right? And, hopefully nothing bad happens to you. And that sometimes they'll let you do that for a while. But sometimes it gets real heavy. And, of course, that's the whole idea, right? So, when targets deal with this stuff, that's important to remember, because you're going to get compared to everybody around you who isn't dealing with this stuff. And they like those little games, right? It's a setup. It's always going to be that way. And the point that I'm making now that we talked about all that is that, the victory is in Christ. The victory sometimes comes within that place of weakness that God allows you to be put in, so that you can realize the manipulation that's around you and not be deceived by the equation of vanity that surrounds you, because everybody else is. Everybody else, well, that person over there is smart. That person over there is strong. That person over there, or and it's not there. God gives you the ability to do a lot of things. People talk about, like that religious game that I was talking about. Do you love God? He loves you. But unless you submit to God, right, and fear God, which is realistic, right? It's insignificant. Well, we'll just say that God was just a sugar daddy. He just made everybody happy, right? Oh, we love you and everything is love. I'm so happy. It's everybody's got everything they want. And well, no kidding. That's not very significant. If I won the lottery and I just started handing all you guys money and solving all your problems, and oh, I want to give you a hug, Doc. Oh, you're so awesome. I love you. But is it really significant? Right? Are people going to be willing to help me when times are tough and I don't have all that stuff? Are people going to be willing to submit to God when his ways seem to contradict our ways and the going gets rough and we have to submit and fear God? Even when we don't understand what's going on, which is what targets do all the time. And then that submission, it becomes significant. And then, of course, then the good stuff can come later, right? Because, God can fix that right away, right? Right? Everything can be all roses and butterflies and all that stuff. But, first things first, right? You're his servant. The rules are the rules. And in order to have, something that's consistent and meaningful and realistic, the fundamental reality is everything comes from God. And so at that point, knowing that you've submitted to him and that he loves you, you can now love him, right? Because he's going to give you the power. If you got a bunch of demons driving you crazy because you refuse to submit to God, you're not going to be loving nobody, right? Because you were created like a piece of clay, and technically, really, you're in a love affair with yourself, aren't you? And, the beauty is that God's gracious and he can mix himself in with that, and he can turn that whole thing into a place of significance, and then it becomes real, right? And, because I was talking to a guy the other night, he's like, well, do you think I'm a damn narcissist? And he's, because, he gets that way and he gets accused of all this stuff, and his whole life has been just, one thing after another. And, technically we all are. Technically, we're all a bunch of damn narcissists. And without God, it's not going to be pretty. Okay? But once you submit to him and you let him, do some work with you, then you can be something, and it's not going to contradict the fundamental reality that everything comes from God. When everybody gets done with this, in heaven, nobody's going to be comparing anyone to anyone else. Like Jesus said, the last will be first and the first will be last. What does that mean? That everything is going to be God, and the intentionality that comes out of the kingdom of God at that point is going to display his creativity realistically, without the equation of vanity, and everything is going to complement what he has done. And nobody's going to be looking around comparing themselves with each other or anything else, because it's like looking at a big picture that's been painted. The mountains are beautiful, the trees are beautiful, the water is beautiful, and it all complements the picture. It's not individualistic, and there's no opportunity for that vanity anymore. It's going to be beautiful, and there won't be any stalking. There won't be any of those things. I kind of went on a tangent there, but I had to do it. Let's see what else is out here. Okay. Pamela says, are you okay, doctor? I think so. I hope. I'm trying to hang in there. Oh, it must have been when I was talking about the fuming. I'm back up at 11:47. Yeah. That happens every now and again. And Andy Smith says, hey, Doc, when I got fumed, I prayed against it and it dissipated and left. I think some of it is demonic. I believe that. I've heard that kind of stuff too. And, you get into some of the weird stuff that happens to people. And at that point, you just don't know. I mean, because there's ways you could do that. In the physical realm that we know about. I think Mattson Miles has talked about a lot of that stuff. And there's ways to do that. There was a guy that I was talking to where there was somebody bringing acetylene-looking tanks into an apartment complex where the targeted individual was living, and it was obvious that they were getting fumed. That kind of thing can happen. Okay. But on the other hand, there are things that are literally, possibly right next to you in the fourth dimension or in another dimension that you cannot see that of course could be, done to you or whatever. And I'm only speculating, but there's a lot of that stuff what do you get into? Not that I'm a Catholic or in the Orthodox or anything, but they talk about that stuff. And I've heard other people talk about spiritual attacks that involve different smells, whether it be sulfur or maybe in the sense of a type of apparition where you have incense or other things going on. And it's a literal environmental stimuli. Where is it coming from? Could be something natural. It could be something else too. You don't know. And I've heard a lot of targets deal with that. And when you get past some of the mind games that are being played against targets, you break out the baseball bats. When they get to the point where they're not scared and they're not looking around going, "Oh my gosh, the Freemasons are going to kill me," or whatever, then they get to the place like Nick. He's trying to break out and just do what he wants to do. Sometimes they'll try to kill you at that point. I think that's kind of something that happened to Nick when he got confused and taken out by the railroad tracks. Yeah, that's horrifying. But if they can't, do something like that, then they'll pull out the big guns and start, doing weird stuff to the target. And there's no getting out of that. The mind games are, that's on the back burner at that point. It's pretty hard to argue with something like that. Okay, let's see what else. Scott Bartholomew, welcome to the live stream. And Scott says, I feel I have Havana syndrome done by the military, V2K, remote neural monitoring, manipulated dreams, but the thing I love about Doc is the message you send helps no matter what the source of the targeting. Well, when I talk about the spiritual stuff, a lot of people, it's a real confusing area because people think that I'm against the tech. I am not. I am simply saying the tech comes from them. They gave it to the military. They gave it to the programs. And what you're dealing with is probably an amalgamation of both. Or because when people, they get into that where it's either, if I'm getting V2K, it's got to be, some guy in a room somewhere working for the CIA. Not necessarily. You could be getting that from the spiritual dimension too, because they're the ones that gave them the damn tech. You see my point? When people talk about neural monitoring and they talk about, synthetic telepathy or other things that people deal with, or unexplainable phenomena that targets are faced with. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and there's probably a lot more technology involved in the spiritual dimension than people know. Like I said, all the computers and jets and weapons and wonderful stuff that we're using, that came from them. So they're using tech. Absolutely. They've got to be. Right? That's where it originated. Some people don't like the spiritual stuff, period, though. And that's, it is what it is. And if people could agree to disagree, that's fine. The thing that I always kind of joke around about is that eventually you're going to find out I'm right. So anyway, let's see where we are now. So Scott Bartholomew says, I go to work, have a family, get out a lot, but it wasn't like that in the beginning. Lost everything and getting it all back currently. Well, that's good. That's good that you're getting it back. Um, the thing that I would warn you about is to have realistic expectations. It's not that your gang stalking can't stop, but I have noticed that primarily for targeted individuals, what they will do is they will back off for a while, and then they will do it again. So it's not that you're not doing the right thing by getting it all back and trying to live your life. You are. But if it happens again, have realistic expectations so that they do not manipulate you emotionally, because that's enough to piss anybody off. Especially if you get a bunch of stuff going or whatever, you get into a new mortgage or whatever, and it's just, because that's classic for targets. Okay. Okay. So you guys are talking about witchcraft and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean it's real, just not in the way people think it is. When people are, doing this stuff, they're pretty much the little sock puppet of the spiritual dimension. Rather than looking at the witch or the warlock as having power, you got to know that they don't have spiritual fingers. But the spiritual entities that they're in communion, they do, right? They do it. And I've dealt with a lot of that, and it can get really intense, man. I mean, I'm talking about serious stuff to where targets feel like they're having heart attacks, horrible panic attacks, insomnia, physical illness, voices, all kinds of weird stuff happening. People turning, it's just like classic gang stalking, animals freaking out, all kinds of weird stuff happening. And you're threatened by the witch or the warlock or the people in the occult or whatever before any of it happens, as a seed of infiltration into your mind. And the ideation that these people are the ones doing it is the disinformation. It's never the people. It's never the puppets. They're just the little tool, the porthole to get to you. All right. Well, guys, I've got to get up and go to work, and it's been real pleasant getting together with you guys. And I've mentioned before that, as a target, I deal with a lot of isolation, and without you guys, I don't know what I would do. And first I'd like to thank the Lord. He makes all these things possible. And, I believe that when this is over, we're going to all get together and we're going to talk about this stuff and we're going to remember it. And it's going to be a time of rejoicing. And that's the real hope of the targeted individual. The world the way it is now, it's getting worse. It's not that you can't be hopeful. I'm real excited about Trump getting elected, but I'm also a little worried about some stuff too. And I would encourage everybody to pray for Donald, pray for our president. Not only that he would have wisdom, but that the people that are coming against him to try to ruin the work that he wants to do to make America great again, that they would be exposed and that their plans wouldn't succeed. We need reform. We need these things. But at the same time, this is bigger than that. Okay, we're not post-millennial. In other words, we don't fix the planet so Jesus can come back. The planet gets worse, Jesus comes back, and it gets better. Okay. Doesn't mean that we can't have times of refreshing or revival, but primarily our hope is in the return of the Lord. And it's important to be realistic about those things. And it's also important to realize that God can give you that time of refreshing and peace in the midst of your circumstances. And that sometimes, the diligence of the target or the individual being tested in that fiery trial, sometimes you do get blessings. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with hoping for those things. But like I said, I'm just, I feel blessed just to have people to discuss these things with. Very lonely as a targeted individual starting this. Horrible. Like being in outer space. So I really appreciate you guys. I really appreciate the moderators. And like I always say, if you guys have any requests or anything you want me to bring up in a live stream, put it in the comments. If you have a prayer request, put it in the comments. We'll lift it up in prayer, because it's important for targets to have that. In fact, we talked a little bit about suicide, and I think we'll just pray that right now, Lord, that there are targets out there who are feeling so depressed and so overwhelmed by gang stalking and by the attacks and the demoralization that is going on, that they would just have a time of peace and tranquility, and that heaviness would come off of them, and that the people that are doing this stuff would get caught, maybe even to the point of financial restitution and compensation for the things that they've done to the people out there who are suffering and unjustly and illegally being attacked. And we just pray that anyone out there who is contemplating suicide would just be flooded with a sense of joy and peace, and that they would know that eventually these things are going to be uncovered, and that even though we are being taken to the edge, that's not a solution. That's not a solution, and that you don't have to do that. And that when that stuff starts popping into your mind, that's the enemy whispering and just terrorizing you, along with the environment of the gang stalking and the tyranny of the world, the flesh, and the devil. And we just pray that not only people that are listening to this now, but people who will listen to this later will have that sense of hope and joy and peace in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'd like to thank you guys again. And I'd like to thank everybody who's helped me out. It's just when people deal with that type of attack on their personal property, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, somebody broke the window out of my vehicle. And a lot of you guys reached out, and you made a huge difference, man. And I appreciate that, because, they laugh about that stuff. We're grabbing money out of his pocket, and there's nothing you can. Like I said, the psychological games, that's one thing. But then they start doing the other stuff, and it's like, you guys really helped out. I mean, it made a huge difference. And I'd like to thank everybody for that. Like I said, if you guys have requests or anything, put that in the comments. And if you want me to make a video, go ahead and put that in there too. And I'll probably be doing some more live streams this weekend, but you never know. I've been dealing with the fuming, and I've also been dealing with the irritation of my throat, and it's getting kind of raspy already. I had to take yesterday off because I do have a tendency to have to speak up into the microphone here for the live streams. But I appreciate all you guys' prayers. I appreciate all you guys' help. God bless. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.